right, welcome everybody. My name is Denver Walker. I'm here with my dad, Mark H. Walker, and he is the owner and founder of Flying Pig Games. And now we work together, which is awesome. In this video, we wanted to talk about Kickstarters and crowdfunding, maybe a little bit of Game Found, and some of our thoughts on running these, what it looks like from a publisher's perspective, a designer perspective, and then also a customer perspective. This isn't about us saying that we are the best at doing Kickstarters or anything like that. This is just kind of a discussion between us and our thoughts on crowdfunding. So thanks, Dad, for being here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to talking with you. I do it all the time, but looking forward to talking with you and sharing it with other people.
Yeah, I know. You've had this idea for a while to do this video, and I think it's a great idea, and it only helps us become more transparent with our fans and have them chime in and give us a little feedback as well. So it kind of works for everybody.
That's great. Yeah.
So with Flying Pig, we're kind of maybe not so much unique anymore, but we've been around for 10 years. And since the origin of this business, we've done exclusively crowdfunding, Kickstarter for for any of our games. And I think that makes us kind of a unique business, especially for a business that's been around for 10 years. So we've done 22 successful Kickstarters since 2014, which is great. So where do you think Flying Pig would be if we didn't have crowdfunding?
Bankrupt would be my guess. It's just, it works real well for us. When we first started doing them, when I first got into this, with Lock and Load Publishing, the way that many wargame companies were working was with the P500 and whatnot, and that works well for established companies like GMT and whatnot. But I've found that Kickstarter does a much better job of getting your word out there to other people that may not have heard of you, and so it's been fantastic for us. It's been fantastic for getting to the people, the folks, the customers, the gamers, and it's given us a realistic revenue stream for producing games also.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we talk a lot about stretch goals and how they can be a hindrance, but at the same time, crowdfunding's kind of inspired this whole new level of game creation where we're thinking of new ideas and new extras that we can add to the game. So I think that's kind of an interesting element that wasn't there before crowdfunding.
Stretch goals are so difficult, right? I mean, you've learned that over the last year. As a customer, I want stretch goals just like everybody else that just adds to the game. Give me some scenarios. Give me some, if I'm doing a CMON Kickstarter, give me some more minis. Give me this, that, or the other. As a publisher, it's a fine line with, I want to create more content for people. Heck, it's fun to create content, but the problem is when you do a lot of content creation, it just stacks up the time. You have to create it, you have to proof it, you have to edit it. So the challenge with stretch goals is looking for stuff that gives the gamer more value, but doesn't add a ton of time. What do you think? Do you think that that's kind of your view on it, or what?
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's a blessing and a curse because more than anything, as a customer and as a publisher, I want people to have their games as fast as possible because that's the basis of even doing the Kickstarter. But I also think that these stretch goals sometimes stretch our imagination, not to be punny, and we end up having these new creative ideas that we wouldn't have thought of in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. There's always fun scenarios, fun elements. If you're talking a straight up war game, different armies, different factions that you can add to a game, and it's a blast. Sometimes you get in over your head by doing that, I think.
Yeah, I agree too. So what do you think is the most important element when running a Kickstarter? I mean, that's a really vague question, so I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I think there are a couple of things. Thing number one, and I think that most people would say this, so much so that I think it's almost a rote answer, and that's you have to have a good product. The problem with that is when you tell that to people and they haven't done a Kickstarter or they're starting a company. I've talked with many people that have never published, produced a game, and they want to start a company, and they've talked to me about Kickstarters and stuff. That gives them a misperception of what makes a Kickstarter work. They think, oh, I've got this great game, right? I'll put it on Kickstarter, it'll go viral. No, it won't. No, it won't. You'll get 40 people to back it. So you have to have a good product. That's a given. The most important part is a social media presence. It's Twitter or X. It's Facebook. To a much lesser extent, Instagram. And it's also knowing some of the influencers and being able to get them to look at your product and get the news out that way. I believe that that's the most important part.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just visibility in general. And then something else I've noticed is just being able to showcase what's inside the box with like cool images.
Oh, yeah.
And Jose was really good about that with Chickamauga, being able to just, put that all into an image. And I think that gets me excited when I see a game found with all the components laid out. So I think being able to highlight the great product you have and then being able to get the word out and stir up a little excitement, especially with the pre-launch page, is really helpful.
I agree. I think it is. And, making a prototype really helps. But we don't always do it because, as you know, and the folks out there don't really know, we've got 5 people that work in Flying Pig Games, not counting freelance artists, freelance designers, freelance editors, folks that play test for us and all that kind of stuff. And these 5 people are not full-time. Denver and I are probably the only 2 full-time employees we have. Everybody else is part-time. All I'm saying is this, is that sometimes it's hard for us to stick to a schedule. There's just stuff that comes up in roadblocks, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it tough to get prototypes done and out. And I think being able to show a prototype, being able to send it to an influencer and show it, we did that with Fearful Sacrifice, and that worked well. Although I have to admit, I think Fearful Sacrifice would have worked well with or without a prototype.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also an accurate prototype. That might be obvious, but I think a lot of times, especially with Flying Pig, the game is very close to being done when we do the Kickstarters. We're not kickstarting concepts. We're kickstarting the game's pretty much done, and this is how we're going to get our capital to fund and get you guys your products, because we don't want people sitting around waiting on a product for years or even a year. So we try to have it already pretty much done. But even that being said, we'll think of a new, this morning talking about having another player aid card in a game or something like that. So we want to be able to show people a really accurate prototype, even if the game is pretty much done and we could have a prototype out there. We want it to be as accurate as possible.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And even as close to, we were this close to being able to have a large Rocket Chickamauga prototype, right? Yeah. And even being that close to completion, it still takes a long time, relatively speaking, to get the game into gamers' hands.
Yeah.
Right now, Chickamauga, the 2 scenarios that were added on in the Kickstarter are being tested. When they're done, the booklet, the rules booklet, then we can finish laying that out.
Yeah.
Once that's laid out, we can start checking all the files, and we can send those to the printer. And then the printer comes back to us with these hyper confusing electronic proofs that you've had a chance to deal with here over the last few months. And it is brain boggling at times. And then we say, okay, print it. And then if we're lucky, the printer prints it in 45 days. If they happen to have a game they're printing from another company that wants more copies printed and will pay them more money, sometimes we'll get shoved back behind that company.
Right.
And then once the game's printed, right, 2 months, 2.5, 3 months, that has to come over here. Then it gets put in another line at the fulfillment company. Please don't, those of you listening, please don't misinterpret this as me whining or complaining. It's just you wouldn't believe all the delays and stuff. And I think Denver and I pride ourselves on one fact: we never lie. We never lie to folks. I've seen other companies come out with the shipping is doubled, and at the same time, I'm shipping stuff, and I'm going, no, it's not.
No.
We're just straightforward with it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying also with all of these steps is all of the room for error, and not even on our part, but just like,
and sometimes on our part,
a ship hitting a bridge, which didn't happen to us, but it happened to other companies. And like, that's no company's fault. It's just like a freak thing that happened. And, there's delays that happen anywhere, customs, all that kind of stuff out of our control. So going back to just crowdfunding, what are some trends that you've noticed just in crowdfunding in general? I'm throwing this out there because, Kickstarter isn't the only platform. It just happens to be the platform that we're most familiar with.
Well, right there, what you just said, and you're much better versed on this than I am. The introduction of GameFound and how well, I'm not sure how well it does, but it does well.
Yeah.
The introduction of BackerKit, and it used to be CrowdOx, was bought by BackerKit. Just the whole pledge manager type deal. When we started doing Kickstarters, that didn't exist. So you had, as you had the postage added into the actual cost of the pledge, which sometimes inflated earlier Kickstarters that may not have done as well as our later Kickstarters. Anyhow, that's all ancillary, I think. I think the big things that I've seen that have changed are how widely used it is. Mm-hmm. The other thing, of course, is and I don't know if you wanted to talk about this later or what, but how it's almost, I don't know how to put this, but how it's almost followed society in that it's become so extreme. And that isn't a judgmental or negative analogy that I'm making there, but it used to be, the rule of thumb was you got 33% of your backers in the first 72 hours, and you got 33%. Let's say you were running a month-long Kickstarter, you got 33% in the next, whatever that equates to, 24 days, and then you got 33% in the last 48 hours. With Rock of Chickamauga, as you know, so I'm literally telling people, listen, we got 82% of our backers in the first 48 hours, and that's not an anomaly. If you have a Kickstarter nowadays, and you see this, Denver, because you and I are both avid gamers.
Yeah.
If you see a Kickstarter nowadays and it hasn't funded in 12 hours, everybody's going, what's wrong with that? I mean, you just got to fund right now. You've got to get a lot of your funding in the first 48 hours, and then we got 18% in the rest of the whole Kickstarter. That's been a huge change. What do you see as a big change? You've been involved and you've been purchasing Kickstarters and stuff. What do you see as a big change?
Yeah, I mean, the trend that I didn't even think about this, but you're right. Like, the speed at which Kickstarters get funded has shortened. I think at first, I was even digging through I was talking to you about this. I was digging through some old Kickstarters the other day out of curiosity, not even ours, just from, another game. And they were bragging about funding in 48 hours, right? Which is great. I mean, everyone should be excited that it's funds. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But nowadays it's way more normal to fund in minutes. The big companies, they fund in we funded at Chickamauga in 12 minutes, which was amazing. The 65-second edition was 18, 19 minutes or whatever. That's awesome. And these bigger companies are doing it in less than a minute. And so that time of which things get funded is shorter. And then campaigns are just shorter in general. It's a lot of people already know what they're going to get before the campaign starts, where I think before a lot of it was like shopping around and then stumbling upon a campaign that you'd like to back. So I think that's changing.
Yeah, I do think that's changing, and I think one of the reasons that the campaigns are getting shorter is that companies realize they go, oh, I can run a month-long campaign. Allegedly, you should be able to make more money, but that's a major allegedly, because what you end up finding out is you have this huge 3-week spot in the middle where you have to continue to be engaged with the campaign, answering people's questions, sending out updates. It's a real time drain, and on a very small company, it's a big time drain for not many pledges. So companies have just started truncating them. And I usually take hints from big companies like CMON. When CMON goes down to 14 days, when CMON goes down to doing 7-day Kickstarters, they know what they're doing. And I think that they've checked out the science behind it, the math behind it, and have figured out that it works better.
Yeah. I would say the other trend I've noticed, and I've seen a couple like TikToks and Instagram reels making fun of this, is the amount of stuff you get. So like there was this guy who filmed a video and he was like Kickstarters in 2017, and it was like fulfilled in like 8 months, and then you just got a box and it's your game. Yeah. And then now it's like Kickstarter's being fulfilled and it's like 2 years later, and then they drop this like pallet of stuff on your front door. Yep. And I think that's kind of what we're saying with the stretch goals, how they kind of get out of hand and they can slow down the whole process. And I don't know, that's a trend I've seen, is just like more stuff with Kickstarters.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you and I, I remember the last time that Flying Pig Games repped at Origins. Now we just go for fun, for anyone that is wondering what I mean. But I think it was 2019, and we had enough people there. We had 5 of us there, and everyone was familiar with the games. Again, Denver knows all this. I'm just saying this to other people. So we could actually take shifts at the booth. And I remember that was the first year that you and I walked around and said, so many of these games are just variations of miniatures with stamped dice. And they look so cool, and a lot of them don't end up being that way. And every year since then, which I think is that year, and then we've gone the last 3 years. Is that right? Or last 2?
Yeah.
I've gone the last 3. You and I have gone the last 2.
Yeah, I didn't go right after COVID. Yeah.
Right. I see the same thing. I mean, I see a lot of the same thing.
Yeah.
Was that an answer to a question or what?
I don't know. I had something to say to that too, but
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So, you know, something I wanted to talk about also is like from a perspective as, you know, you're a designer, a business owner, and a customer, and you back a lot of Kickstarters. We talk about this all the time, but that's kind of a red flag for us. If we see someone has started a campaign and they've never backed anybody else's Kickstarters, we've always kind of said, like, you got to participate in the, you know, you kind of got to give back. We want to see people who are participating, and it's kind of a red flag for us. So what do you notice first in someone else's Kickstarter? Like maybe one that you're interested in backing? Like what is one of the first things you notice?
That's a great question. The first 2 things I notice hands down are, is it the first Kickstarter they've created, and have they backed any? Because if they haven't backed any, it just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know how to say it. I mean, if you're not a gamer, then don't sell me a game. The second thing is, like I said, is if this is your first created Kickstarter, I will go look at the company page then. So like I'll go to www.ourgame.com and check them out and see if this is their absolute first game, because I know no one realizes how difficult it is to publish a game till you've done it. So I get somewhat leery of people that are releasing their first games. How about you? What's the first thing you look at?
I agree with those 2 things. I will be totally honest. I probably look at all the art first. Like I'm probably just like skimming to see how cool it looks.
Sure.
And then that's probably what hooks me first. And then I'll go in and do a little bit more digging. Yeah, I'm always interested in the companies too, and who they have worked with, or I'll look up the designers and things like that. But to be totally honest, I'm attracted to the art first. So
yeah, you're right. I'll stand by what I said, but you're totally right. What grabs me is the theme. So
yeah.
I guess that's kind of the art. It's the theme slant art. I'm, all the things I love. There's a bunch of stuff from like World War III, modern type war games I love, to witches and vampires, and cyberpunk is a huge thing, horror,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. If that theme will definitely be something that grabs me. But then, what does it look like? What do the minis look like? What does the art look like? Yeah, I look at that too. I mean, it grabs me also.
Yeah. I mean, you already touched on this, but what would be a pretty big deterrent for you from backing a Kickstarter?
Like I said, if they'd never backed one and this was the first one they had created, many times that's just a hard stop for me. Outside of that, really, not too much. Most Kickstarters I've ever looked at that I liked, I haven't run into anything that turned me off on the Kickstarter that I could think of.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on it not having a lot of backers. Something is if it's too confusing to figure out what I need to back.
Yeah.
And we have customers ask us this all the time, and it's a totally valid question, because like something that might seem obvious to us, especially like with something like 65 second edition, when you've got an upgrade kit, you've got all this, like you've got these add-ons, you've got drawn swords, what's compatible with what. That is totally confusing. And that's where we come in to help customers and guide them. But I was backing I told you about this Kickstarter. Well, actually it was in backer kit. And I was a little bit confused about like, am I getting the base game, or do I also need to buy these factions to go with it? What do I need to just get playing the game? And it will deter me enough to not back it. Like, unless it's something I'm like dying to have, that's a little frustrating to me. And I feel like as a business owner, I want it to be as easy as possible for people to understand what they want, like what they want and how to get it. I want that to be easy for them.
Couldn't agree more. Excuse me. There's, I don't know. I'm sure they have a term for it, but I would call it buyer exhaustion. Yeah. If it tires you out too much trying to figure it out or getting it, how to get it, there's got to be a lot of people who just say the heck with that and click off of it. So yeah, I agree also. But I've never had that happen on a Kickstarter, maybe because I'm a little too impulsive. If I like it, I'll just go down the right-hand column, get the baseline pledge. That's all I ever get, and I'll click that, and I'm on to something else.
Yeah, I can be that way too, but I am your daughter. So what have you backed recently? Just kind of in a fun...
I can't remember the name of it. But it is, I don't know. I would have to, we can edit this if we need to, so I could go and look it up.
Sure.
Right now. Well, Onata.
Yeah.
You and I both backed Onata, which looks like a quirky, fun kind of game. I kind of expected it to be designed by David Thompson, but it's not. But it's by a company that's published a couple of his games. Mm-hmm. They did Resist and they did Witchcraft. And then I'm trying to find another one that I just backed that I can't. Stalker, which is kind of this, it's a takeoff of a video game that's a post-apocalyptic world. So like the three settings that eat me up in fiction, film, and gaming are 1985. That's one, comma, two, cyberpunk, three would be a post-apocalyptic. So I pledged for that. And then I still haven't received, matter of fact, I pledged 2 years ago, but allegedly it's shipping a story-based war game called Purple Haze. And looking forward to getting that. So, yeah. How about you? What have you pledged for lately?
Well, I did the Onoda, which I
Yeah.
think looks really fun. I love that idea. I remember reading about that story in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F Word.
Yep.
And in the beginning, they talk about that, and I thought it was such an interesting story. So I'm really glad someone designed a game about it. And then I backed the newest edition of Defenders of the Realm on BackerKit.
Oh, yeah.
And so we'll see. And we'll see. I mean, that's one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm excited to check this one out. Yeah. Those are the only two I can remember, but I definitely impulse back things and then all of a sudden get something in the mail and I'm like, oh yeah, I did back that. So that happens to me.
Yeah, Mom just called me up to tell me that a huge box had come in. I thought, oh, great, it's another Kickstarter. And then I remembered what I'd bought her for her birthday. So it's that.
Oh, well, that's still good. They came in before her birthday. So
yes, it is.
So what do you think what do you think Kickstarter could do better to enhance the experience for customers first?
That is such a great question. I wish I had an answer for it. I would say simplification in everything that goes through. Simplification, yeah. Just simplify the experience and the pledging experience. That would be the biggest thing I would think.
Yeah.
How about you?
I agree with that. I also think there's a lot of scrolling involved.
There is.
I think, GameFound kind of changed this where they've got segments and you can click on it and you can do headings. And I mean, I just feel like sometimes even on our Kickstarter pages, I'm like scrolling. And, if the shipping section's all the way at the bottom and someone didn't feel like scrolling to the bottom, which is honestly understandable because that's boring. And then they're upset about VAT charges because they didn't see the shipping section. I mean, I can understand. I kind of wish maybe it was a little bit more concise looking because it just looks like this really long, page.
Yes. Yeah. It'd be a fascinating test or study if I know for one thing, as you all know, we do some pretty nice Kickstarter videos. I would say they're very nice. And the number of people that watch it, and they're short because we realize they need to be short. And I think the number of people that watch them through to the end, and we're talking less than 2 minutes, is 37%. So I really kind of wonder how much information on a Kickstarter page is needed. I wonder if people really need all that information to be able to make a purchase decision. I'm sure some people do. Maybe people can leave their feelings on that in the comments.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think maybe it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, I think less people are shopping around on Kickstarter and more people know exactly when something's going to launch and they go and back it. They don't even care about the video because they're sold, like I didn't even watch the Onoda video. I just had read about it and seen some people talk about it and thought, oh, that looks cool. And I just went and backed it, So,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know, maybe people know what they want. So from a business perspective, do you have any ideas for what Kickstarter could do better?
Oh, it could promote war games better. I see some very lame Kickstarter projects that get on their front page, that get that Kickstarter stamp, whatever it is, Kickstarter seal of approval. I forget what it's called. 65 actually got one way back when in 2016 when I had it. I never see that for war games, and I'm sure that their reply would be, well, war games are quite the niche. And my reply to that would be, no, I see things that are way lower funded than some of our war games, and they get picked to be uh, Kickstarter thingamajig of the day or whatever.
Highlights.
So they
Yeah.
could, I think that they could spread around the love a little bit more with that. Um, that would, they have done come great strides with improving their software and the interface. I think they've done a good job with that, and now they're trying to help us market. You saw the email that we both got from a lady there in the marketing department of Kickstarter. I don't know if they're sending that to everyone or all of a sudden they decide to start including Flying Pig games, but that's nice of them too. So I think they're making some very positive strides. I would just like to see them tap some war games to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big argument against Kickstarter when people talk about GameFound and Kickstarter,
Mm-hmm.
is that not only, us being in this niche of hex and counter wargaming, even though it seems to like it's a thriving hobby, it still gets pushed down in all of the other stuff within tabletop gaming. And then on top of that, with Kickstarter, you're not just funding tabletop gaming, you're funding, art, music,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of projects. And so I think just that niche within the niche, it just gets pushed down, as opposed to maybe GameFound where it's just games. I don't know.
No, I think that that's a very good point. Yeah, and I think that's one of the strong points of GameFound, and that's that they're a little more Euro, and I don't mean Euro game, I mean Euro graphically centered and friendly, and that is a positive. We'll see if it continues to be a positive with some of the new regulations that may come in from Europe. That may discourage American publishers in general, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. So kind of quickly, can you walk us through a setup for a Kickstarter when you're thinking about it? Like, maybe not from the total origin of when you're going to run a Kickstarter, but maybe a month out, a week out during. Like, what are some things that you're thinking? What are you doing?
Well, to keep it kind of short, yeah, I will talk about some emphasis that we have. One of the primary emphases, a couple of months out, what we would like to do is get the basic Kickstarter page completed, all of our information in, and submit it to Kickstarter so it's approved. Once it's approved, you can launch whenever you want. So at that point, you can put up a date when you're going to be launching a Kickstarter. So that takes us to our next thing. You start what's called a pre-launch page. It's what I call it. I'm not sure. I believe that's what Kickstarter calls it, right? And in our last two Kickstarters, you helped me quite a bit with this. You get this pre-launch page going, and what it does is people can go there and see some very, very basics, like maybe a banner of what we're talking about, whatnot. But there's a button where they can sign up and click to be notified on launch. And that's very important to any Kickstarter campaign, is to have a lot of people on that, because the second you launch, they'll be notified, and you get that big surge of pledges at the beginning, which gives you momentum, which only builds more pledges. At the same time you're doing this, about a month out, if you're a prototype type people, a month to 6 weeks out, you should have your prototype done and off to some influencers that you've contacted beforehand and said, hey, if I can send you a prototype, would you have a chance to look at it and give us some ink? I always call it, but it's really give us some time, give us some airtime. That's very important. As you lead into it, you don't want to do this too early because of people's memories. They just forget. As you lead into it, you want to start working with your banners and putting up your banners. We like Board Game Geek. Facebook, you want to do Facebook ads. Facebook is probably the most efficient and cost-effective way. Board Game Geek is probably the second most efficient. If there are other people as far as wargaming goes, to some extent, ConSimWorld. And then as you get close, you want to have your big newsletter that you're sending out, telling people, trumping the Kickstarter and whatnot. And as you get to the actual day, you put in the newsletter that evening to pop out, and you're announcing the start time, and hopefully people come and pledge. There's a lot more to it than that, but I hope some of that was helpful.
Yeah, I think you really focused on how important the visibility is, that you let people know that it's happening. I mean, obviously all the art, building the page, typing the blurb, that stuff is common sense, but really getting the message out there and making sure people know when it starts, how to back it, and having things like the newsletter and the pre-launch page to just notify them. I mean, those are all the things you focused on, and I think that those are the most important. So
yeah.
After a Kickstarter ends, what is important after it ends to do?
Keep in touch with people and keep your focus and work hard on the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's imperative. It's updates and newsletters to your backers is difficult. It's difficult to do these because there are large stretches of game development and game production where there's really nothing to say. Where you could say, we are editing and we changed these 2 words today, or we are testing and we tested this scenario today. But people are still interested in seeing that, and you have to convey that to them. Mm-hmm. Of course, on the nut and bolt level, you have to be putting together your pledge manager in a expeditious manner, so people can lock down their pledges. Of course, then we go into the whole production thing with getting files and whatnot to the printer, but we've briefly discussed that in the past. Mm-hmm. What else? What did I miss?
Oh, that was a great answer. I just think keeping people updated on the process is always reassuring without overdoing it, because I think we've all gotten back to those Kickstarters where you get a note, like 2 emails a day from them, and it's like, okay, like we get the point. Yeah, but I think keeping people in the loop. And speaking of, after the Kickstarter ends is, the preparation for the pledge manager, which is something that we can get started on during the Kickstarter campaign, but sometimes it's something you do. Most of the time we do it after it ends so that we know what stretch goals we're working with and what we're going to be able to offer as add-ons. So it's one of those things you have to wait and finish. So I remember when you and Mom started using CrowdOx and how relieved you guys kind of were, or you felt like it was this huge efficiency boost to the company.
Really?
So if you could explain to people, what is the purpose of a pledge manager? What is it? And then how has it really changed the crowdfunding game?
Well, it allows you to set up software where you could more accurately estimate shipping costs. And while you were doing that, to be honest, you could give them an opportunity to buy not only things from the Kickstarter, add-ons and things like that, but other products from the company's line of products. And it's a convenience for the customer. It's a profit-making tool for the company. And it also, at the same time, allows us to come closer to getting our shipping right.
Yeah.
We never quite do that. And unfortunately, we're the ones that usually end up paying for it. losing as much as $15, $16 a game that we ship to Europe. But we're getting better, and that's what a pledge manager is for.
Yeah, it's nice because it already has a lot of the tax rules built into the program. So when I build these pledge managers,
nice,
there's actually a button that says tax rules. You can go click on it, and it'll have all of the EU countries and their VAT rates. It has countries all over the world with different VAT, whoever has VAT rates, not just the EU, but Australia, a lot of Asian countries, some South American countries, and also it has state tax rules within the country. So we're able to apply like the Virginia state taxes and things like that when applicable. It's not always applicable, but so that's really helpful. And then, like you said, calculating shipping, and then it's great for our European and Canadian customers who we currently can't process shipping through in our web store. They're able to access the majority of our games and web store through the pledge manager just by pledging at the $2 level. So,
Yep. That's one of the great things about it, for sure.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for meeting with me. And even though we talk all the time, but it's great to be able to, talk to our customers about what we think about Kickstarter and crowdfunding and your thoughts on it. And hopefully this will help our customers understand the company better, and maybe even some, up and coming companies who, want to hear some thoughts on crowdfunding. Maybe it'll give them some ideas.
Yep. Thanks for talking with me. And I hope that it does. I hope that there are creators out there to say, I can do a Kickstarter, because you probably can. But if you're going to get started on social media, I met a crowdfunder last month, and they ran a unsuccessful campaign, and they came to me and they said, what do I need to do? And I go, what's your social media presence? And they said, we don't do social media. Not to be flippant, I said, then you really shouldn't do Kickstarters. It's very important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good takeaway from this whole video too. All right. Well, thank you so much.
All righty. You have a great day. I'll talk with you later.